Good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Mitchell. I'm the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about associate directors and being a trailblazer in the industry. So before we get started, I would like to introduce my co-host, Andrika Thomas. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year because we haven't seen you in a while. I'm Andrika Thomas. I'm the creative director for Black Women in Clinical Research. I also do interview prep and salary negotiations. So if you need those services, please hit me up. And I am currently a clinical project manager at Walgreens. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Andrika. And we have Courtney. Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Courtney, and I am a longstanding member of Black Women in Clinical Research, and will be here until I can't be here anymore. I am currently a CRA1 at PPD, part of Thermo Fisher, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see what these ladies have to tell us because I am looking for opportunities to grow within the company. So give me everything you know.
Yes, drop all the gems. And I would like to introduce our speakers. Shantae, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. And Courtney, I love that. Anybody that's on this panel that knows me know that I'm all about supporting, fostering, and mentoring professional growth and development. So I love that. So good evening, everyone. My name is Shantae Anthony, and I am an associate director at Elucent. I have been in the industry now for 22 years, starting out as a clinical trials assistant. My first 10 years was at Duke University, held various roles, but a lot of my background is regulatory. So I think having that regulatory knowledge and background and, really kind of challenging what companies and in certain departments and Duke really wanted to do kind of helped. That was what propelled my career. But I currently have, out of the 22 years, 16 years of management experience. I currently manage CRAs, but I have managed clinical trials assistants, in-house CRAs, clinical operations leads, as well as Derm Tech interns and UNC Wilmington interns. I'm also an adjunct instructor at Derm Tech, and I liaise with that program. And I also liaise with NC Central University, and I will be an adjunct either in the fall or next spring of next year at Central. So welcome, everybody. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. And thank you, Danielle, for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Shantae. Sounds like you wear many hats, and I think that is amazing. So, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Mary, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I see some familiar names and faces on the line, so thank you for taking the time out to join. I hope it's warm wherever you are, because it's certainly cold here in North Carolina where I am, but we're making it. So my name's Mary Williams. I'm currently an associate director at Merck. I've been in the field of clinical research for 13 going on 14 years. I actually started out in research supporting government-sponsored research, so trials through NIH and NCI, before moving over into the industry side, at various CROs and sponsors. So I've had the opportunity, been very fortunate to have, hold a lot of different roles across data management, quality assurance, project management, and study management. Both regulatory and in my current role now as a program lead overseeing, a larger therapeutic area and portfolio of trials at the sponsor. So, we're really always excited to share our experiences. We're really looking forward to the discussion today and, certainly encourage everyone to reach out with questions and continue to connect even after the meeting today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mary. So we are going to go ahead and jump in with the questions. And so I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what qualifications and educational background are typically required for a career as an associate director in clinical research? And I'll start with Shantae.
Okay, so I think it actually really varies. So I've seen it run the gamut. So You know, it could be a health sciences degree and 8 to 10 years of experience. It could be PharmD, MD. It just really, really depends on not only the company, but the construct, right? So are you in academia? Are you at a biotech? Are you in pharma? Are you at a CRO? So I think that's where you'll get varying differences. I think for the most part, at least from my experience and what I know, a lot of companies really want you to have at least a 4-year degree, and most want 8, 10, or even 12 to 15 years of experience to be an associate director. And a lot of that experience, they want you to have management skills, line management skills, you know, having that understanding of what it is to manage people, because the further you climb in your career, the more oversight you'll have, not only just over your direct reports, but maybe over a department or over a process or a sponsor. So those are the things that in my experience that they're typically looking for. So it really depends on the company, and, you know, if it's biotech, small biotech, big pharma, those are the things that I see. But at least a 4-year degree, I would say, and about 10 years of experience.
Okay, thank you, Shantae. Mary.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When I think of the associate director role, it's really more of a career level. And so the requirements vary not only from company to company, but even within a company from role to role. So an associate director in project management versus an associate director in site monitoring or study management will likely have different qualifications that they may be looking for. But I do agree overall. Right now in the space, having a 4-year degree, is certainly important. Although we are seeing more and more shifts to more skill-based hiring, which I find really encouraging, because certainly there's skills and other experiences that can really lend itself to people management and people hiring practices. But I'd agree in general, having a 4-year degree and anywhere from, I'd say 5 to 10 years experience. I'll say that having an advanced degree certainly helps maybe reduce the amount of years experience required for the job role. So that's something to keep in mind. And you will typically see that within the job description. You may see the company will weigh a combination of education and experience when considering a candidate. So if you have a PharmD or a PhD or a master's, and you only have maybe 8 years experience, they may weigh that combination together versus maybe a bachelor's. They may look for a little bit more years experience for the role.
Thank you, Mary. So we know that this is not an entry-level position. I really feel like in the industry, a lot of times people apply to different roles and say, oh, I can be a director. Well, no, this is not an entry-level role. So with the associate director role, you definitely want to have experience in the industry. So can we elaborate on some of the responsibilities? I know we said oversight, and I know Shantae was talking about being able to manage CRA. So can we talk a little bit more about those responsibilities and the duties? And so you do have direct reports as an associate director, Mary?
Yeah.
Or
Oh,
Shantae?
go ahead, Mary. No, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, because I think, again, this varies. Even within my current organization on the sponsor side, what is in scope for the associate director really depends on the department. And so some associate directors may have direct reports or line management responsibilities, some don't. So currently, I don't have direct reports or line management responsibilities. So I'm a program lead. So I'm responsible for strategic oversight within my specific therapeutic area in oncology. So I lead a team of other associate directors and managers who then manage studies within my TA. But I have colleagues that are associate directors in regulatory affairs. So the scope of their duties is slightly different. And then I have colleagues who are associate directors who the primary responsibility is direct line management for a team of CRAs. But I think overall that oversight and strategic leadership aspect are really big key responsibilities. But it just depends on the organization and the scope of the role, I'd say.
Thank you, Mary. Shantae?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And so I think for me, like I currently have 18, soon to be 20 in 2 weeks, direct reports, all CRAs. And, you know, your job as an associate director, it runs the gamut. So for me, you know, I do a lot of interviewing. I actually sit on a governance for a major sponsor that we have, trying to keep the sponsor and my company in alignment, right? To ensure that we get repeat business, but to ensure that we keep the client happy and we keep the project moving. So, and that governance piece is a lot. It's a huge undertaking. So, I manage the CRAs. I'm on governance for a particular study, but then I also work really closely with the project teams. I'm ensuring that they're resourced properly. I am ensuring that the CRAs that are on their staff are actually meeting the requirements for whatever they're supposed to be doing for that particular study. And my CRAs work in all different indications. I mean, my background is oncology mostly, but I have CRAs that are anything from you know, wet AMD, macular degeneration, and all kinds of oncology studies. I have a lot of RSV and COVID CRAs that are on those kinds of studies as well. And then, you know, also just, you know, ensuring that our department, so I'm an associate director in clinical operations. So just working across other departments to ensure that from the start of when CRAs are actually brought onto a study until pretty much the end, that everything flows properly, whether it's assisting with a change order, you know, pulling back on some of the resource and, you know, helping the project team understand what their role is on the study. So it definitely varies depending on, you know, the company and your department and you know, how things are set up.
So thank you, Shantae. Wow, 20. That just
Yeah.
makes me think like how, you know, I know this wasn't, I just thought of this question, but how do you manage 20 people? Like staying organized? Like how does that?
So it's really interesting. And although it sounds a lot, and I know one of the people on the call now, I'm just going to call her out, Jennifer, can attest to, that's actually cake for me. So when I worked at Seniors Health, I had 35 direct reports. But what you do is, and everybody can't do that, right? It's a skill. It's a learned behavior. It is really a skill. And it's about time management. But you know, you have to understand how your team and your staff actually works and what works for them and what works for you. So for example, even though I had 35 direct reports, there was some that maybe it was a performance issue, or maybe I just needed to keep tighter grips on. I met with them every week. Then I had some, they've been on their study for a while, no performance issues. Maybe I'd meet with them every 2 weeks. And then we'll have some more senior CRAs and staff where it's like, well, nothing's really changing. We don't really need to have, you know, visits every 2 weeks. We can meet monthly. So, and you base your schedule around what their availability is and what actually they need, you know, to feel supported. So even though, you know, having 20 direct reports, it seems like it's a lot. I still don't work that many hours in a day because my staff kind of, they're on a rhythm. They have a routine. I have a routine with them as well. And you really do get used to it. You know, you just make sure that the conversations are there, you're meeting with your staff, you're showing visibility and support for your staff. And I think when you've done it for so long, like I said, I've been managing people for 16 years, you really do. And if you have to like what you do, right? And because I like it and I'm so good about fostering and developing people, it's really, really not work to me. I don't see this as a job. This is my passion. And so it doesn't really bother me whether it's 20 people that I manage or 35.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm still, when you said 35, my eyes were like, whoa, 35. So I, like you said, that definitely has to be a skill. And I can imagine with managing that many people that there are challenges that occur. And so what are some of the biggest challenge that you've had with transitioning into this associate director role? And what would you think would have made this transition smoother?
Okay. So it's actually really funny. You know, when people think about you're in a role and you're in this job, right? And people want the autonomy to be able to do their job, right? But when you get to AD and director level, that autonomy sometimes can be a challenge, right? Because where you still have support and you have, you know, management above you and things like that, the expectation is that you are driving and making the decisions, where before you probably were making some decisions, but now it's at a higher level. So having that autonomy to be able to make the shots and call the shots. And, you know, a lot of people that know me, they'll tell you one of my mottos is I ask for forgiveness rather than permission. You know, if I feel like it's the right thing to do, hey, I'm going to do it. And, you know, we can talk about it afterwards, but really being and having that confidence to know that, okay, everything is relying on me. Whatever it is that I do, right? It's not only affecting me, but it's a trickle down effect. So I think for me, that was the biggest challenge at first, is having that autonomy to make decisions that really not only just, you know, affect my team, but my department. So that was really that was something that I really had to get used to.
What you said reminds me, just thinking about my mom. She always says, you know, I'm going to say what I have to say. We can talk about your feelings later. So, so that's from Mrs. Cole, y'all. So that definitely reminds me of that. So Mary, what about yourself? What are some of those challenges?
Yeah, you know, when I saw this question, I was thinking about that. You know, I think the first thing that came to mind was having that confidence. You really need to lean into that confidence in yourself, in your experience, in your critical thinking, your strategic and decision-making skills. Because when you transition into these associate director and director or higher level roles, you're really not looking for someone to give you direct guidance. You're making, you know, critical decisions that will affect your team, your portfolio, your project, and you have to be confident in your decision making. And if you get to this point, which, you know, congratulations, it's for a reason. So I think sometimes we can be our biggest barrier. We can maybe doubt ourselves, question ourselves. Even, you know, when I went to apply for associate director role, I was thinking, can I be an associate director? Do I meet all the qualifications? You know, I was really the one holding myself back when I even went to pursue that role. And even once I got in the role, you know, I found myself questioning, all right, I'm going to make this decision. Is somebody going to say something? You know, so I think that was a challenge, transitioning from maybe an individual contributor to, you know, a more leadership type role. And so in thinking in that way, you know, you really need to lean into your own confidence on your skills and be direct. You know, be forthright and realize that you're in this role for a reason. So that requires you to be the one to make the proactive decisions to help support your team, whether it's CRAs or study managers or what have you, to really drive the initiatives that you're responsible for moving forward.
So it sounds like you really need to trust yourself and believe in your abilities and to really take initiative when it comes to being an associate director. Well, so thank you, ladies, so much for sharing. I am going to hand it over to Andrika. And so, Andrika, take it away.
And continuing on with the conversation or topic around skills, so can you name some highly valued attributes that one should have to be successful in a associate director role? Shante?
Yeah, I definitely think confidence is one of those. And to kind of, I guess, further elaborate into that, being confident in saying, hey, I don't know the answer. I think a lot of times we are so afraid to say that we don't know something, but people will respect you more when they know that you don't know it all, right? They will respect you more and they see you as, okay, this person's really human. So I think having the confidence to say, that's a great question. You know what? Let me get back to you on that because I don't know the answer. We'll find it out together. You know what I mean? I think people can really, that resonates with people. I think that's important. Definitely critical thinking skills, right? You have to know when to jump in and when to kind of scale it back some. But not only that, the ability to have critical, difficult conversations. That's another thing that a lot of people still aren't really good at. That is a learned skill. It takes years to develop, but I am a firm believer of if I'm doing something wrong and you don't tell me, I can't correct the behavior. So and that rings true not only for performance, but just in the way we live and how we want things to work. Like when we're at work and we need things to happen, sometimes you have to know how to have those difficult conversations, right? And you have to be professional when having them. but you need to be confident still when you're having those difficult conversations, so people know it's a conversation that is warranted. It needs to happen. You're not, you're not trying to be disrespectful or make them feel any kind of way, but you really do have to be good at having difficult conversations, because you'll find even at the management level, before you even get to the associate director level, you're going to run into some situations where you're going to have to put somebody, in the chair and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm hearing. How are we going to address this? So I think that's really, really important.
Thank you, Shantae. And, speaking of when you said sort of like, don't be afraid to ask questions, don't be afraid that you don't know it all, I literally go by saying that saying is, don't be afraid to be seen trying, right?
Yep.
Because I feel like a lot of us, we shy away from asking the important questions, or a question that we feel like we may sound stupid on. So just overall being confident in that position. Mary, did you have anything else to add in terms of skills and attributes?
Yeah, when I think of getting to this level and higher, being able to demonstrate strong leadership skills in the areas of strategic thinking, and being proactive when, addressing issues and mitigating risks. I certainly think those are really critical skills. It's one thing to be given an assignment, execute the assignment well, and then move on. But you really, have to move away from thinking, oh, this is how my individual clinical site, or my individual study works, and really think more broadly about how, as a whole, this impacts our organization or our initiatives. So thinking more of that strategy level. I certainly think, being able to engage with different stakeholders and diverse teams, having that skill set is really important. And, going off with what Shantae says, you have to be comfortable managing conflict and have, a really strong emotional intelligence. And what that means is you need to understand your emotions very well, and also the emotions of others, because you're going to be interacting with a lot of different people, a lot of different communication styles, different backgrounds, and your job is to be proactive, resolve and manage issues as they come up, or even really be proactive to prevent them where possible, to continue to move your initiatives or projects forward. And so, we're human. We work with other humans. There are times where I know myself, things are going to upset me. So I have to be able to regulate my emotions and, take that time for myself, take a step back, and really think, how am I communicating information with maybe the person or the team that I'm working with, and what can I do to manage this situation so that at the end of the day, the goal that I'm looking for is reached. Because if I, really get upset or pop off, then, that's not going to resolve anything. So managing your own emotions is important. And then I think, as Shantae mentioned, when you're managing teams and working with direct reports, you have to understand, where other people are coming from, so that you can work together with them and support them as well. So having that strong emotional intelligence, I think, is really critical.
That's great, Mary. One of the things I've learned in terms of managing emotions for myself is to not respond immediately. Like, give it some space, some room to breathe, and then come back later, because your response in that moment will be very different later on, in terms of tone, in terms of, how it's received. So really just give things air. So thank you for those tips. So in terms of your career path and where you plan to move, where do associate directors typically go from this position? Shantae?
So I know, like, for in clinical operations, because since I've been in CRO world, it's mainly where I've been housed, and it's usually dependent on the company, but you will go from associate director to director. Some places have been senior director, executive director, and then you go up to VP. For me, it's really funny because I do a lot of talks for the NC Central students and Durham Tech students, and it's funny how even just the younger people who are just, or not younger, just people that are just starting their careers in the industry, right? They've been here for a year, and that second year they're ready to be the CEO, and it's just like, that's not how this works. Okay, it just doesn't work like that. And so, and I think for me, like, just becoming, an associate director, learning all that I've learned, it's also shown me that I've learned a lot, but there's still a lot more that I need to learn. So although I aspire to be a director, I'm okay being an AD for the next year or two. I really am, because there's so much that you learn from other people, and you know, you really have to give yourself grace and time to not only learn your role, but master it. And I think that's really important. And a lot of people don't do that. They're like, oh, I've been in my role for a year now and I'm ready to move on. Well, if you've been a CRA and you worked on one study that entire year, you ain't ready to move on, because there's another study or another indication that's going to be ran completely different. And when you get there, it's like starting all over again, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I thought I knew everything and now I don't. So just really kind of taking time to sit in it, right? Sit in it, learn what all that you can, and then aspire to go to that next level, but make goals for yourself, even if they're small goals. And so, but for my career path, it would be after associate director, it would be director.
Thank you, Shantae. Mary, I'll ask you the same question. However, I want to add a little bit onto that. In terms of you moving into your next role, do you have mentorship within your company or outside of your company that's helping you get there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The answer is yes. And I'd say not only just mentorship, but advocates. I think there's an important distinction there. So I am always looking for an opportunity to either mentor or be mentored. And I think that's really important because it really expands the exposure that you have, and we learn most from engaging with others who are maybe in that space or have a unique experience from yours. And so when I think about my next step, similarly, following associate director, it's typically director level, and what that looks like really is dependent on what my interests are. I'll say that. Because of the engagements I've had with mentors and advocates, both within my company and outside the company, I've had the opportunity to connect with others and really been notified of, hey, there's a director opportunity coming in this space. I think the beautiful thing about having mentors and advocates is they support you. They really are like your board of directors who are supporting your career development, and they've come to me and said, hey, I was in this meeting and so brought up this opportunity. I think you'd be great for it. And then I can take that information and say, is this what I want in terms of my career development? Because that's also something to keep in mind. People will be the first to say, hey, this is what I wanted to do and this is what worked for me. But you really have to take ownership of your own career and identify where you see yourself, where your interests lie, and where you want to go next. So I've had to turn down some director positions because it didn't really align with where I saw myself going and really developing in. But I think within the next year or two, should an opportunity come forward that aligns with my development interest that's in that next level space, that's certainly something I want to pursue. And that's largely, in partnership with people that are advocating for me on my behalf, because it really does matter, the perspective of others. And so when you go into these interviews and you go into these spaces, it always helps to have other people before you even interview, before you even maybe meet with the hiring director, telling them, hey, this person, she's great. Like, you would love working with her. It's kind of like when you want to go out to eat to a restaurant and someone you trust says, listen, you are going to have the best meal. Let me tell you right now, you feel better about that interaction or going into that space. So it certainly helps to have both mentors, but more importantly, advocates who are really pushing for your development and your growth.
Great.
Can I add on to something that
yes,
she wanted
absolutely.
to? Yeah. And so Mary, if you remember when we first started talking, you spoke about how sometimes you don't necessarily know if you're ready. You have that little voice in your head. Mentors and advocates more often than not know before you do. They know before you, and they plant that seed that gives you that power and that confidence to go ahead and take that next step. So I think that that's really important. And I think pretty much everybody on this call should have a mentor. I have mentors still back from when I worked at DCRI that I stay in touch with, because you need that pretty much through every step in your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think one of the things we also have to do or get comfortable with is verbalizing where we want to go, right? Where we want to grow to. And so definitely having those advocates and mentors will help you understand that. and learn who you are and where you want to grow as well. Thank you, ladies. And so my next question for you is, what are the current trends and challenges in the field of clinical research, and how do they impact the role of the associate director? Shante.
Lord help. So, I'm going to say something on this call, and some of you may be shocked, some of you not so much. But I know for me, co-employment, I don't know what's going on here lately, but co-employment is like huge. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. And see, what people need to understand is this industry is big, but it's really small. And so you take someone like me who's worked at Par Excel, Syneos Health, PPD, Health Decisions. When people apply to these companies, they're reaching out to me saying, hey, do you know so-and-so, right? And what I'm finding is somebody will say, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I'm like, oh yeah, they work here. And they're like, you know, they work over here too, right? I don't know how people do that. I don't know, first of all, especially a CRA. Don't ask me how you do that, because y'all know 8 to 10 days on site, you're traveling, what, 80% is travel? So co-employment is really, really difficult. But for me, I'm finding it more and more than before. So what I typically do is our vetting process has gotten a lot stronger as a result. If, you know, I tell my TA people all the time, hey, listen, if you see a CV that comes across your desk and they've worked at any of the companies that you know I've worked at, one of the other associate directors, one of the managers, ask us, do we know them, before we even waste our time trying to interview this person. I don't know why people do that. Not only is it unethical, I mean, it's just you're breaking so many confidential laws by actually doing that. But co-employment has been one of the biggest things that our industry has, at least for CRAs, that we've experienced probably in the past, I wouldn't say maybe 2 years. And then resourcing, like CRAs are literally like, they're like the shortage of nursing is like the shortage of CRAs. And then CRAs know that, hey, people want me, they'll jump ship. Another company may say, oh, you have 3 years of experience, we'll give you $25,000 more a year. Oh yeah, I'm going. So resourcing and co-employment, at least for me, those have really been challenges as an associate director.
Thank you, Shante. How about you, Mary?
Yeah, so I'll share from my perspective. So, where I sit and kind of the focus of my role is really operationalizing the clinical trial from the sponsor side. Mm-hmm. And so from my perspective, there's a few key challenges that ultimately tie together. And so I'd say, we're seeing an increasing complexity of clinical trials. They are not getting simpler. They are getting more and more complex. And you couple that with, and I'll start with the US, we have an oversaturated trial landscape. Multiple sponsors, CROs, both in the US and outside of the US, operationalizing trials all at the same time that are competing for ultimately smaller and smaller population of patients as the focus of the trial becomes more niche. You couple that with limited staffing resources at the trial sites and CRA resourcing capacity. We're asked to do more, faster, be more efficient, really with less resources. It's just it starts to really build and build. And we're doing this by trying to reach more patients, both through diversity in clinical trials to make sure our trials are, really truly representative of the patients they're going to serve. And also we're being asked to adopt a lot of new technology in support of our focus in decentralizing trials with the ultimate goal of expanding access for the patients. But as you know, more technology doesn't mean it gets better, usually just gets more complicated, and it doesn't make things simpler or easier in theory. And I come from a family of engineers, and they'll be like, yeah, this is so simple. And I'm like, well, when you hand it to somebody and actually use it, is it really that simple?
Right.
So when you combine all that together, we're really asking ourselves and our teams, whether you're at the site or the sponsor or the CRO, whether you're a CRA or a study coordinator, how do we operationalize trials quickly? Because time is precious. Every time, every delay delays potential, access to life-changing, life-saving medicines and vaccines for patients everywhere. So time is really important. But how do we do that efficiently? because we have less resources. And how do we reduce the burden of clinical trials on our trial sites and our teams, while expanding access to patients at the same time? So our jobs are getting much harder, no matter where you sit, site, CRO, pharma. And then when you kind of branch out outside of the US, you have even bigger global challenges where, you have changes in regulations, especially in the EU. For those of you who might be familiar with the EU CTR submission process, makes expanding clinical trials into the European Union a little bit more challenging. And we're looking at ways to, ship clinical supplies into territories and regions that maybe we don't always go to for clinical trials, with the goal of really expanding access to patients everywhere. So I say all that to say it's not getting any easier. We definitely need more people like you on the line, your innovations, your ideas, your thoughts to really, bring this forward. And so those are some of the things that I see challenging in my current role as associate director.
Thank you, Mary and Shantae. So what I'm hearing is overemployment. I think that's the term the internet likes to use, Shantae, overemployment. There's like a ton of Reddit threads about this. Resourcing. And then from you, Mary, so the increasing complexities of clinical trials, and then the increase of technology as well are some of the challenges that you've been experiencing. Thank you for shedding light on that, ladies. I will hand it over to Courtney.
Thank you, Andrika. And so this is a great segue for me because I am very focused on technology by nature. And I think that is where my career is going in clinical research. So with these gaps that we currently have, with the trends that are now coming out with machine learning and using AIs and things of that nature, what do you all think we should be focusing on as far as education? Are there any additional certifications that we might be needing to look at? Is there maybe like a chat group that we might need to look at that's a public forum outside of Black women in clinical research? What are the things that you think would help assist us in kind of riding this wave of the new technological curve? And I'll start out with Mary, since that's where you took it. I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of just development and certification, certainly your standards being a part of, some organizations like ACRP, really building your foundational skill set and knowledge around, clinical research as a whole. But when you think of really what's coming and what's trending now, outside of, the certifications and development within clinical research to expand your knowledge, or things like project management, what we see is a lot of focus on change management. So being prepared to understand, communicate, and lead these changes, many of which right now are technology centered. But for technology specifically, I'd say not only technology, but data science and understanding of data science is important. More and more, I think we see a shift across multiple industries to understanding data, how it's used, where it comes from. Basic foundational skills really help. And that ties into the technology piece because we see more technology coming, whether it's systems integrations or machine learning, AI. Many of you may be keeping up with all the rapid changes with ChatGPT. Natural language processing. They start to sound like a lot of buzzwords. And when you're working in these spaces and you start to hear some of this technology coming around, having just a basic understanding of what that means is really helpful. And there's a lot of, free resources. I think Google has some free certifications, Coursera, Udemy, they have a lot of great courses. You can find stuff on YouTube that kind of breaks it down in a simple way for you. I certainly think that's important. But even going a step back, it's one of the challenges that I see, a lot of people struggling with in their career is a basic understanding of technology. Are you proficient in Microsoft Word? Can you use Microsoft Excel? I can't tell you how many calls I've had with CRAs. They don't know how to filter a report in a spreadsheet. And so it's really slowing down how they can be efficient in even just some of their day-to-day skills. Being familiar with things like OneNote or Teams, or depending on, or Slack, depending on what your company uses, just helps you be more efficient overall. So I think there's a lot of great free resources that just help build your comfort with technology to make you more knowledgeable and efficient. And then once you get through, through some of those basic foundational skills, try to branch out and maybe learn a little bit more about some of the new technology that's coming and that will ultimately impact our industry. I think would be really helpful.
Great, thank you. Shantae, do you have anything to add to that?
I think she answered the question perfectly. I do want to say too, with the technology, one of the things that we're experiencing is when you have older populations, right? And you're wanting them to use these e-pros and these e-diaries and things like that, like we need to start taking into account who are we enrolling on these trials, right? And what is it that we really need from them? And so I think, like Mary said, definitely SOCRA, ACRP, those certifications. But my niece has a saying, I go to YouTube University. You know what I mean? Like definitely look at YouTube, and even LinkedIn will send notifications about some free courses, and Coursera is definitely great. But I think, for me, not only learning it, but doing it so you can better explain it to other people, right? So when you have that opportunity, I'm one of those people, I learn hands on and through repetition. So when you're able to do that, you can sit down and you can kind of give somebody a high level overview of what the system does, how it can work, how it works best for you. For this role, you may not need to know all of this stuff, but for this role, you may need to know a little bit more. So I think being able to not only learn more about that and be able to share that information, but sometimes just any kind of additional learning is going to be good. I don't think it's anything that's actually warranted, but it'll help you be better at what it is that you're trying to do with this wave of technology, with all of the remote monitoring that we're seeing, and now moving to remote consent processing and all of these things. It's just gonna give you a one-up on what the industry is moving towards.
Great, thank you both. So moving forward, one thing that you both definitely spoke to were the current challenges that the older population are starting to have as we transition into a more technologically focused world and organization, I guess you can say, because clinical research is an entire organization. We really truly work together. How do you think networking and professional connections play a role in advancing not just your career as an associate director, but those of us who are looking forward to making the proper steps to advance to where you all are? Would you suggest staying within your bubble, or would you suggest gravitating towards someone who knows something that they might be able to maybe not teach you because it's hard, but just kind of help you with? Shantae, let's start with you.
Okay, so this is actually a great question. And when I'm giving presentations to Durham Tech and Central, one of my last slides, it literally says network, network, network. I don't think people understand the importance of networking, because you have to meet certain job requirements and qualifications to get the job. But what you don't understand is we're in an industry of, it's not always about what you know, it's more about who you know, right? Mary even alluded to that. You people that can vouch for you, they're hey, what do you think about this person? And I think that's important. But when you get a mentor, right, they're giving you a different view and perspective on how they see things based on their experience, right? And so usually your mentor is someone who's been in this thing a little bit longer than you have. So they have a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge, a lot more tips and tricks that they can actually share with you. And, one of the things, Andrika said this, looking at your resume, hey, you might need to have two resumes. Are you trying to get this kind of job or that kind of job? Well, let's do two resumes, but and then someone who can give you some good concrete feedback. Hey, I understand you want to be a CRA, but you've only been a CTA and you're really not ready. These are some of the things we can do to help move you towards that next goal, which may mean moving from CTA to a study coordinator and getting that background and experience, and then moving you into a CRA role. So I think really using that mentor to kind of really kind of help guide you in your career. The other thing that I always like to share with people is never burn bridges, right? This industry is really, really big, but it's really, really small. And just like you can have somebody vouch for you, somebody else can be like, don't hire that person. You know what I mean? So you and we don't have to like everybody that we work with, but we do have to be professional. So, just really kind of using that person, right? I tell people at the end of every talk that I give, I'm on LinkedIn, follow me. I may not be able to help you get a job, but I may answer some questions, or you might be like, hey, I'm at a crossroads in my career. I don't know what to do. Let's talk about it. I might can help you, figure out what might be the best route for you just through casual conversation. So I think really having a mentor and networking, it can really open up your world as far as, furthering your career along, or even going to a different company and filling that company out to see maybe where you later on want to actually be. So I think those are some really good things to do. I see people on LinkedIn and they'll say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and I'll reach out and say, well, I'm not hiring here, but I know a couple people at PPD that I can put you in. Just really kind of being okay with asking for help, right? And reaching out and expanding that network. I think that's really important, because if you don't ask, I don't know.
Right. Thank you for that. That was some good stuff. Most of that a preach, girl. Quickly, if you could kind of add to that, Mary, what would you like to kind of piggyback on there or add to what Shantae said?
Yeah, I think the phrase that I always go back to that I've heard years ago was, your network is your net worth. Really building your network out is important. I like to think of it sometimes even as a cheat code in navigating your career, because you are working with other people, learning from them. They're learning from you. It's really kind of a mutual interaction a lot of the times. And it's important because there's been many times in my career where an opportunity has come up, or, I might want to pursue a position at another company, and I can reach out to someone in my network and say, hey, I saw this position posted. Can you tell me a little about it? And I can get some really honest feedback about either what the application process is like, what the role is like, what the corporate culture is like. And I think that's always really important as Black women in clinical research. Is this a space that really supports diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is this a place that's going to support my development? Do I want to really move into this role? So continuing to network, I think, is really, really important, because it gives you access to information that you may not have because you're working with people who are in spaces that you're not in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to wrap it up, because we want to leave time and space for our guests to ask you all questions. If you could sit across the table from yourself from 12 years ago, what advice would you give yourself, knowing that you would be aspiring to be an associate director one day? And Mary, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would probably yell at myself and say, speak up, speak up, take ownership of your career. No one knows what you want unless you communicate that to them and do it often. I like to share that my husband works in marketing, and there's this idea in marketing of both reach and frequency. So how wide is your net? How many people are you communicating with or networking, with across different teams or areas? How many people know you? How many people know what you're doing, what you're about, what your goals are? And then how frequent is that message that you're communicating, about your own development? You should be discussing your development goals with your manager, your mentor, key connections, skip level managers, a few times a year. Because if you don't know what you want, you can't expect other people to know. And so you really need to, speak up, let your light shine. Do not just kind of put your head down and do work. Speak up. And I think, see someone's in the chat, take up space, really lean into all that is who you are, and be confident in yourself. And don't stay too long in a role or a company that doesn't serve you. Be comfortable to move on. I think early in my career, I stayed with the company 4 years. It was very clear there was no development opportunity for me, but I felt safe. I felt, some sense of being grateful to have this job. And if I could look back, I'd say, no, you need to speak up. And if it doesn't serve you, be comfortable moving on and into a space that is really going to be supportive of you and better your overall development.
Awesome. Yes. Let your voice be heard and take up all the space you need. Shantae, how can you just put the cherry on top of what Mary
I was about to say what she said, but but for me, I'm going to tell you when I probably until when I was at Cineos is where I really kind of got my courage to kind of be who I am. Very outspoken. I mean, built a relationship with the CEO. I'm one of two reasons why Cineos Health now celebrates MLK Day. So it took a while for me to get there, but one of the things that I have learned is know your brand, right? Know your brand, know who you are, and don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. Everybody's journey is going to be different, and how we get there is going to be just as different. But don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. And just remember, no doesn't always mean no. It just means not right now. That's what I tell people all the time. It just means not right now, or maybe not here, you know? So those are some things that I think are really, really important. And challenge the status quo. Challenge the status quo. Be that one that speaks up, right? And just know, like, know what I'm saying. It's probably going to piss everybody off, but it needs to be said. Challenge the status quo. And like I said before, never burn bridges. You never know when you're going to run across someone else, whether it's at the next company or 5 or 10 years down the road.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. You're both so inspiring. Like, seriously, I really, 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 really appreciate all of this. As someone new to the industry, I really do appreciate your time. So I will turn it back over to Danielle.
Thank you, ladies. I'm over here hype. I'm like, I got in the chat, this little light of mine. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and take some questions. I'll probably do maybe a few minutes of questions because I know we're about to be over on time. I know we started a little bit late, but if anyone would like to come off of mute. And okay, Alicia said, woo, I needed this call today, child. Yes, girl. I'm about to say, it definitely was very encouraging for me. Courtney, you say something?
I do have a question. And this goes back to, because I needed this call today too. Seriously, this week has been extremely challenging for me, trying to find my place. This is my second career, and I'm going from a space of being the jack of all trade, master of none, the one that everybody can go to, that knows a little bit about everything or where to find whatever, to someone who knows nothing. I know nothing. I feel like I've been in the industry for 2 years now, officially. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing still. So how do you all stay motivated when imposter syndrome makes you ready to walk away?
Oh.
So I will tell you, I am unapologetically Shantae. It took me a while to get there, but I am when I interviewed for the position that I have now, when I was done, the SVP said, there are not a lot of people that I've come across that know how to articulate your brand, but not only do you do that, you do it very well. Because not only am I you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you. And you know, for me, for my staff, I am their biggest cheerleader. I am their biggest cheerleader. And sometimes you need a hype man, right? And you need for somebody to say, hey, you give yourself time and give yourself some grace. It takes time. You don't get there overnight. And I think having a manager and a support network of people who really care about you and your career and where you're trying to go and understand that. A lot of times, you know, it's people on this call now that either I've worked with, have worked for me, that I mentor. Just having that person that you can just be yourself with and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you just said in front of all of these people, you have to have somebody around you or in your corner that's going to be there to support you. Because Courtney, you may find that, okay, you like, you know, electronics, technology and things like that. This industry is for you, but maybe not what it is that you're doing. You know what I mean? And so, and I think for me, and people are like, I don't know where you get the time, but I really appreciate you making time for me. It's because of what I love. And I think you have to really find somebody who's going to invest in you. That's really important. Find someone who's really going to invest that time and that energy into you.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, I think imposter syndrome is something I've lived with my whole life. It continues. I have my days. Um, I met the CEO of Merck, the company I work with, and I walked into that room and I had a conversation with him, and he said, "I have imposter syndrome." And I said, "Really? You, the whole CEO of this Fortune 500 company?" And then I'd had conversations with VPs, other senior leaders in the company, and they all said the same thing. So I think it's comforting to know that you're not alone. Most people experience it, especially people who are very self-reflective, people who find themselves, doubting, questioning, their decisions. It means you're thinking critically. It means you're really thinking, more broadly about where you are in your career, and that's a good thing. But know that you're not alone. Have grace for yourself. I certainly agree with that. And then I think similar, have a mentor or advocate or a coworker or a friend to hype you up when you need it. I call her my play line manager. She was one of my first line managers in research 12 years ago. We haven't worked together in, I think, 10 years, but we still chat, every few months. And I can be very honest and open with her. I can be myself. I know it's a very safe space. And she'll be the first to remind me, you're amazing. You bring all of this to the table. Don't doubt yourself. So it's good to have that person in your life as well, or multiple people, because and you should be that person for others. So it really is important to build on those networks to support one another, because we're all going to be in that space at some point.
I definitely agree. People will tell you I will support others and I'll be your cheerleader all day long. And I'm like, when I get to my corner, I'm like, all right, well, I've given all my good vibes and good juju to all my friends. So somebody else was
Me.
about to say, oh,
I was about to say something. Courtney, I'm your hype woman. I mean, I know I am your hype woman. So I know Courtney is being very humble, everyone. But let's back up a little bit about Courtney here. I'm gonna drop something about Courtney. I met Courtney probably at SCRS conference, probably about 2 years, I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember exactly. But I met Courtney at the SCRS conference. And when I met her, I automatically thought she was a CRA in the industry just because of the way she carried herself and the knowledge that she already had for the clinical research industry. When I met Courtney, Courtney had already did all of her research. She had committed to getting into the clinical research industry. So when she talked to me, I was like, oh, wait, what do you mean you're not a CRA? And like I said this to her, and I know you remember when we were standing there, you're looking at me and you're like, what? So Courtney already possesses everything. And like, Courtney is amazing in person. She's personable, all of that different stuff. Like, I was immediately, like, when I met Courtney, I felt like she was my best friend just from meeting her, that one time. So Courtney is being very humble and she knows a lot. And like we said, you just have to give yourself grace. There is so much information in this industry and there's so much that's changing on a day-to-day basis that giving yourself grace and knowing that you're not going to know everything and that it's okay if you don't know everything. And so because this is your second career, just lean into what you don't know and then lean on people that are surrounded by you for support. And so you have a huge support system. So anytime, and it happens to me too. I have imposter syndrome. A lot of times I'm over here, I'm like, am I doing the right thing with BWICR? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing with BWICR. Like, I go back and forth with that all the time. So I just think that that's something that a lot of times people who are functioning at a high level, that's the type of things that you face. And because you're used to being in these types of positions where people look up to you. So, and like you said, you're a cheerleader for everybody else. So everyone looks up to you and they gravitate towards you. So I just want to let you know that I will always be your cheerleader. Courtney's number one cheerleader. And, she was able to get into the industry. She transitioned from the military and went right in. So, you're doing an amazing job. And for you to already be a CRA and all of the training that you went through, this is a cakewalk. I feel like you went through the military. Yeah. So, like I'm just saying, there's other people that can support you and they're here that's on this call too as well. And if anyone wants to drop their LinkedIn URL here in the chat so that we can support one another, because I really know that that's what it's all about with BWICR. providing that safe space, that support system. I know we are a little bit way over time, but I want to leave us with some things. And while I am leaving us with some things, I want everyone here to drop their LinkedIn URL in the chat so that we can connect. And I will leave this chat open for a few minutes after we are done. I'm sorry that we didn't really get to go through a lot of questions, but please feel free to send the speakers questions. Send me if you have any questions, Courtney, Andrika. We will help you as much as possible. And if you want to type some questions in, I can always save this chat and ask some of the speakers the questions that you put in the chat. So some of the things that I have been left with, I really motivated. This really helped me. I know a lot of times with us having these events that it's helpful to you, but it's also helpful to me. So I'm going to share some of, I would say, some of the things that I learned tonight, really to take initiative. And with being an associate director, you are in a position where people are looking up to you. And so being able to continue to learn. There is always something to learn in this clinical research industry. There's always something changing, technology, so being able to adapt with technology and being able to be proficient in your job and always willing to learn and network with people. Networking is number one. Networking can take your career to a whole nother level. And like Shantae was saying, it's not always about, like it is about who you know. So, sometimes connecting with that person, stepping outside of your comfort zone, being uncomfortable, it is okay. And if you feel uncomfortable, then you know that you are doing something right. So embrace being uncomfortable and to always share the knowledge and to help one another. I feel like when it comes to change, a lot of times we're looking for someone to give us the green light. You don't need a green light, just go. If you want to make a change in your community, if you want to tell people about clinical research, you want to do career fairs, you want to tell the next generation, you don't need anyone or you don't need a company behind you to tell you to go out into your community and talk about clinical research. And like we mentioned before, if you're passionate about this, then let your passion shine through, let your light shine. It doesn't matter what level you are on or in the clinical research industry. Every role and every person that's on this call is important. So don't let anyone tell you that your role is not significant in this industry. And we also talked about not burning any bridges and to be professional and respectful. And like Shantae was saying, you don't have to like everybody, but you can still be cordial and to do your job. And it is completely okay to ask for help. I ask for help all the time. If there's something that I can't do, I will ask somebody for help. Hey, do you know how to do this? And that is okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help and to be confident. And also use your resources. LinkedIn is a great resource. Everyone here said that you can, reach out to them. So if you have questions, please ask us. We want to help. And that's what BWICR is all about. So I want to say thank you to our speakers for being here tonight. Thank you to Mary and Shantae. Does any speakers or co-hosts have anything left that they would like to say before we shut this down?
No.
I didn't get a chance to drop my LinkedIn in the chat, and I probably will, but everybody on here, you can reach out to me. It's literally just Shantae Anthony if you look me up on LinkedIn, and was really glad that I was able to do this tonight. And I'm so glad that everybody felt like they got something out of it, because this is my passion. This is what I do. I love doing it. So thank you.
And I am going to do you a solid, Shantae, and drop
Thank you.
it in here for you.
Okay.
Yes, I echo that sentiment as well. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And I'll be the first to say, if you send me a message and I don't read it right away, I try my best to check at least once a week. I'm not really great with all these messaging apps, so bear with me. Between email and messages and text, it's a lot. But please reach out if you have any questions or would just like to connect. It was really nice, talking to all of you tonight, and I hope everyone really leaves this session feeling very motivated, inspired as we go into 2024 this year.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary.
And any questions that you guys have put in the chat, if you want to send them to me directly, that's fine as well.
Yes, you can do all things. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. I'm going to leave the chat open so that you can connect with people, but I want everyone to have a great night and stay warm.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.